So first of all, let me introduce myself quickly. For those of you who don't know who am I and just sitting here because it's a available room, my name is Sebastien Borget. I'm the COO and co-founder at Sandbox. Sandbox, who is already familiar with Sandbox in the room? Okay, great. So you're in the right room. Well done. So I didn't want to show any slides, etc., because if you're already familiar, you probably have seen teasers. Maybe you played the alpha, some of you already. Maybe you're a landowner. Oh, a few other. Creator, artist, builder. Well, at least you're involved or you're curious. So I wanted to take this time more for like an open conversation, an AMA, so you could ask me in person, not over Telegram or Zoom, any kind of question you have about like what we're building, how this journey has been for us, what are some of our next steps, and yeah, to have like this open moment. Is it a half an hour, 1 hour we have? Half an hour, so I'll try my best to answer fast and to any question here in the audience. And I think they will be passing a mic. So whoever wants to kickstart this session, let's go.
So I have a question that's general about the metaverse. You guys been one of the first, or maybe the first, if I'm not wrong, that started selling lands. And after you guys, a lot of other started as well. And it became this thing of like having real estate in the metaverse. Which metaverse? So, sorry. So what is your opinion about that? And like, what should we invest?
All right, that's a good question. So I wouldn't claim anything. Like we not have been the first to do lands. Lands comes like even Second Life had land sales before. In the decentralized metaverse, I believe Decentraland or CryptoVoxel, one of the two have been among the first, then Somnium Space, and then Sandbox on December 4th, 2019, if I'm correct. The way I see the metaverse, this myriad of virtual worlds which users through an avatar can access, it's exactly this. It's like an infinite amount of virtual world, meaning an infinite number of lands. And in some of those virtual worlds, lands could be finite. In some other, it could be infinite. Some could try to map the real world. Some, like Sandbox, could have this square that doesn't represent reality. I cannot give any specific recommendation. I think like at least try to invest where you can project yourself as a user, where you can project yourself as a creator or an entrepreneur or spending time with your avatar because you have done your research and you understand the mechanics underlying the value of the land. We try to build Sandbox as almost like the entertainment place where everyone wants to be, where you will find games, you will find brands, you will find celebrities, you will find music artists, but you also find a lot of diverse experience that hopefully you will not find anywhere else because just like those platforms wouldn't allow them, or the business model behind those experiences wouldn't allow this kind of experience to be present because it's been pushing towards KPI driven or free to play rather than growing the creativity behind. And we've done that through two things. One, bringing a lot of brands, 200 already, and two, like having creative tool and supporting creators and any kind of emergent ideas and gameplay they have.
About lands in general, from the question that was asked, how do you see the fact that the lands are limited, so it's defined by the smart contract, but what's the incentive for the Sandbox, but any other metaverse, not to recreate a new world, a new city with renewed land because it works well? And what is the after business model when all the lands are sold?
Two parts to this question. First, like, why would Sandbox never make more lands? So in the smart contract, lands is defined, like you can see the function, the mathematical function that generate this square is limited to 408 and 408. We cannot change that. And it's kind of the basis of the trust relationship we have established with the community. We put that from the beginning, from the white paper. We announced like this is a finite land, there will be no more. And once it's sold out, it's sold out. Like it's entirely into the hand of the community. And the main approach, the main business model will switch from just selling land to the primary market into like growing the value of land and optimizing the secondary market, people renting land or people like becoming like virtual real estate broker and connecting brands, creators, etc. Other virtual world can come, like I said, the Metaverse will be an infinite number of virtual worlds, so there will be an infinite supply of lands, but still, I believe that will only be one sandbox. And by trying to gather most of the creator, most of the creativity, and most of the cool stuff, we hope will be the place where you, with your avatars, will want to spend most of the time.
Hi. So I understand that Sandbox specificity is that it gamifies this whole metaverse experience. That's how you guys are different to the other metaverses. And so I was wondering, for like very, very basic business getting into Sandbox Metaverse, how do you envision this gamified experience? For instance, like a supermarket would buy lands in Sandbox. How would you advise them to gamify their whole experience with the consumer?
All right. Well, I wish I was such a creative guy that I always had all the answers for like what's the best strategy for any brand to enter the metaverse. But honestly, I am not. So that's why the beauty of Sandbox is like it's an ecosystem where you can have like agencies, where you can have creative people who are probably better suited to answer this kind of question and advise brands on their strategy. The retail and shopping experience, I think it's a difficult one because frankly speaking, you can buy anything you like on Amazon within like 10 seconds. That's their USP, like one tap, boom, shipped in you at home in the next hour. I feel like the metaverse should not right now be that, try to compete in that direction, but be more like experiential, like how do I spend time around the universe of the brand I like and try the product on my avatar, or either if they are like player-oriented as wearable, or I don't know, content like enemies, platform, decoration, thing I can interact with to inspire me as a builder to put into my land and be something that experience takes time, basically. You need to discover, you need to learn, you need to see in action. That could be one way. The other way I see is like using engagement mechanics, such as the alpha season, which like is the basis of play to earn and drive users to come back until they are rewarded for their loyalty, and maybe turn like the ownership of some NFT and like an NFT access pass in a way into a reward that can be redeemed in a physical world, as an example. Yeah.
So I have a question regarding to, does location matter in Metaverse?
Yes.
Different piece of land. So for example, in the real world, the land in city center is much more expensive than somewhere more in the suburb. So maybe there's two parts of the question. Do you see that's the case for Sandbox? How do you see the case, let's say, for Metaverse in general as well?
So location still will matter in the Sandbox since you cannot access just any parcel of land straight in one click. You cannot teleport straight unless those parcels have a portal attached to them. You'll still need with your avatar to walk through from one parcel to another, which means like it takes you time. And time then is value, literally now in the metaverse and thanks to NFTs. And so you might choose like how distant you are from a portal. You might maybe use in the future some transportation method that save that time and define, and that will increase or impact the value and the traffic of your land parcel. The good thing is like this world is evolving and it's evolving very fast thanks to technology. So it's not a permanent state where you think like my parcel as always is too far or there's not great content. If one day there's a community that comes next to you, builds a great thing, or you build together with your neighborhood, you can grow the value, you can attract people, you can work with curator and other mechanics like play to earn to attract traffic and then change the rules of that. Well, here. Everyone needs to hear the question, so we'll...
So given that people own the land and they have full autonomy to build whatever they want on the land, right? That's the whole thesis of decentralized, like user-generated content platforms. How do you think Sandbox or others are going to govern the kind of content and how people, deploy projects? I mean, how they can avoid being, providing content that's abusive, racist, or just harmful for the greater ecosystem, given that once I own the land, I can do whatever I want with it. You know what I mean? So how do you think governance would go in these open platforms, given that with decentralized platforms like Meta or Facebook or Instagram, they can just, with a click of a button, just deplatform the content creator or the person who's just deploying the app? How would that go in decentralized platforms like the Sandbox or I know that decentralized has its own DAO, but at the end of the day, are you just going to blacklist that piece of land, just mark like an X and deplatform the landowner, or how would that go?
Oh, all right. So, try to speak louder on the question, because at the forefront we hear a lot of the.
Do you want me to?
I think I can summarize, like basically how like ownership of the land and the asset is like really enforcing and supporting this governance model.
No, I mean how does the platform govern the kind of content deployed in this open world, given that once I own the NFT land or the land, I can do whatever I want with it?
So, as a platform, we have term of service, term of use, and I believe like the main role of those term of use is to protect anyone from making sure that they could be staying safe, and the kind of content they are going to encounter is generally like harmful or not illegal on the platform. So that means that there are certain type of content that are not allowed typically because the activity is not legal into certain jurisdiction. For example, casino or gambling are things that are not allowed in Sandbox. As long as you're respectful of those terms of service, you will be able, that doesn't remove the ownership of the land parcel you have, but we will not allow the access, at least within the Sandbox ecosystem, to that land parcel if you're not respectful of those terms of services.
So when it comes to enforceability, you have this power to practically deplatform that person.
At the moment, because the gameplay itself is centralized, the ownership of the asset is decentralized, we can, as a platform, we have this responsibility to protect all users against harmful and inappropriate behaviors, and that will include that, yes.
Thanks.
Hello. So I was wondering, how did Sandbox plan the years to come, as Sandbox is in a way a game, and as we know from experience, many games after a certain period of time get repetitive or boring to people, and the models that are used in game are hard to stay relevant to the community. And how did Sandbox plan to actually adapt to some new waves? Because I believe a lot of new metaverses are coming, a lot of land is coming, a lot of different things that some people might like more than Sandbox. Do you have like a scalability idea or something like that?
I think like basically you cannot plan for anything. Instead, except like you cannot predict the future. So you still need to keep flexibility in your plan. Like we know the end goal is to become fully decentralized, owned by the community, on the asset, on the tokens, sand, land, avatar, the governance. However, that long road in the middle will also include adaptation. Like when we started in 2018, interoperability, PFP collection, that was not a thing. That was not really the thing many people were talking about, and it didn't grow that much as in 2021. But when we saw like the avatar, those characters were actually the main entry point for so many people into NFTs, we immediately understood that offering those people and their avatar more value, more utility into a world where they can play, interact, and create would actually be meaningful. So that's been an adaptation on our plan. We didn't plan for layer 2. We frankly thought like Ethereum would scale and gas fees will stay at happy $3, $5. Well, unfortunately, that didn't scale that way. So we had, along the road, had to integrate and move to layer 2 solution. We didn't plan for like the ecological impact of blockchain becoming a big thing that would actually become the main focus point for most of the industry and becoming a blocker towards like more adoption. So we had to react and like implement again the solution, compensate for carbon credit, give to charities around like forest replanting, regrowing, etc. I think it's part of like having a great community, being an entrepreneur, and just also seeing like it's a very evolving space, and it's evolving at a speed that I've never seen before as an entrepreneur, and staying relevant matters a lot. And because we're born into this ecosystem, I feel like that's also our chance. We are so much more reactive than those Web 2.0 companies and companies that have been building only relying on business model that they thought have been reliable for years instead of innovating and taking the risk. And that's how we believe we stay relevant again.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Yes.
Hello. What was the biggest obstacle in your journey of creating the sandbox, like in the past or now that you're seeing?
Well, back in 2018, I think we were just 5-10 of us into those conferences, trying to explain what we were building, and I think Sandbox itself, the product, the creation tools, we were not very mature as well. Like the aesthetic was too much like Minecraft. People didn't really see the benefit of like owning your game asset, owning your land. They thought like I just had to apply a decentralized economy on top of an existing game to infuse what Web3 is about. And so not many people, they were probably not wrong or right. They were just like waiting to see like we could deliver on what we were promising. And it took time. It took us over a year to do our first seed round. It took us over a year to do our to start building and doing the first land sale. And it took us quite a few months as well on our Series B. And every step, don't think like it's easy right now. Like every step we get always challenged. How are we going to scale this massively? How are we going, all those brands, to build the content? How do we grow such an ecosystem so people can use our tool? Why are we going to be able to have all the lands on the map populated? Every day I get all those challenges, and yet I'm here, and yet we're here, and yet I feel like we can achieve something interesting together, because I feel there's a lot of creativity, a lot of positive energy, and people who want to use those tools to make a true difference, a true impact. And that's what drives us.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, jumping back on that question. When did you decide to do Sandbox? Like, do you remember the day you were like, I'm going to do this, so this is going to happen? And from there, how did you explain to the first person that you hired what you were going to build? Okay. And who was that first person?
So true story, we didn't create Sandbox. The original creator of Sandbox is called Onimatrix. It's a genius guy in Argentina who had this game on Congregate, he called the Sandbox, where you could play just with the periodic table of elements, 21 elements, and playing with physics. The idea is like, somehow we thought like, what if we brought that on mobile and just using this new technology, touchscreen, let anyone do the same, but by the magic of their finger. Turn any player into a creator with one finger. And that was the moment the idea was born. And ultimately, over time, I like to think you get infused from those conferences, from meeting people, from working again and again on the same product over time, talking to the creators, the community, into evolving the product where always trying to address the different challenge and problem you had. It's a long story, I guess.
Hello. You talked about the difficulties at the beginning, but the success today is pretty phenomenal. But what are the new difficulties that you have today that you didn't have before, and maybe that you didn't expect? And one question about that is, with all the mega brands that are now coming to Sandbox, do you see it more complicated to still be attractive for the smaller studio, the smaller game designers that may be afraid that they won't be able to exist against all those mega players?
So yeah, there's definitely always a new difficulty. Right now, I think we've pretty much established on the side of virtual real estate, but well, we only built so far 100 lands maximum, so it's still very empty. That's the #1 challenge: building content, bringing creativity, and using technology to create more immersive experience. And that requires, I think we'll never achieve that alone. So that's why we put a lot of energy into growing an ecosystem and having this foundation supporting creator and various projects, educating a lot of builders into those accessible tools to build the content. You'll be surprised, but actually big brand doesn't mean like big gaming studio producing. On the opposite, like the current builder in Sandbox, they were not professional video game studio for 99% of them. They are just people like you, like passionate about it, tried the tool and suddenly became better. I think we have some in the room around here if they want to raise your hand and they can share their story. And they become very good at it. And then they start to build for landowners, for their own product, for their community. And I'm sure those guys will become the next big studio of tomorrow. And in the meantime, our tools, they are still beta. So when I talk to the largest game companies, they say, okay, but I cannot put 500 people in my company to work on this. Like, you're lacking all those long line of things that we need to add so they can work more professionally on it. So that's what we're also adding progressively to cover both sides of the spectrum and make really, truly anyone able to create with these tools. Oh, okay.
Why do you think the Bored Ape, the BAYC, is more expensive than AMSM, the parcels in the Sandbox? I mean, as far as I know, the BAYC, the Bored Ape is have the less utility than AMSM parcels in Sandbox. So why do you think?
Good question. I guess I never asked myself why is something more or less expensive or something else. I just think like some things will be part of culture, will be there forever. I think a CryptoPunk is part of this culture, this ecosystem. There's nothing that will beat the CryptoPunk into like they were the first, they are an element of representation. The Bored Ape, they have this community, and this community is, I feel in their DNA, it was a lot of creative people, a lot of influential people in media, in entertainment, in celebrity. They leverage that pretty well, it seems, and now they're becoming this juggernaut that, starting from characters, is turning into this social club that also will push towards like content creation and the whole development of the IP around it.
Me again. So I just wanted to ask, you collaborate with many brands today, but what, as a Web3 firm, actually as a project on the blockchain, how did you manage to get some 2.0 brands to come and collaborate with you? Was it hard getting these brands, these big companies to come to your land, especially in such a new and young space?
Yes, it was, actually. So there's two things that come into factor. First, like we had a legacy as a game studio already working with brands. So we had already established trust with certain partner and the proof that we could execute and produce great creative content with those brands. Yet, it took us probably over 12 months between the very first discussion with a brand and finally their launch into Sandbox. I remember probably one of the first was Smurf, Care Bears, The Walking Dead. Those were discussions that took us well over a year before they accepted to jump into the space. After, progressively, through the effort, they see more and more brands on the platform, they see the content being created by the community, the game jam, the UGC. Those periods of time have been shortening. Still, there's been some challenges. It's not like now, like the two challenges. One is definitely so many companies are in the space into NFT and proposing different things to each of the brand that they are suddenly like submerged with proposal of like, let's do like this, let's do like that, etc. So they had suddenly to build up internally their metaverse, their NFTs, their Web3 teams to educate themselves rapidly, maybe hire some of you here in the room to advise them on the best strategy, and not just jump on the first opportunity, but build like a real rationalized strategy in the space. Which means that, and it's great, like from our competition comes innovation, comes like whoever will come with a real, most creative, more useful, more value for the community ID will win the brand and create a great engagement with them. And there's been also, into certain vertical, the pushback from the audience around like adoption of NFTs for reasons sometimes that are very well justified, like abused of like the pricing, the rug pulls or bad thing that even though they are not representative of this overall industry, have been hurting all of us. So very few bad actors have been hurting us into like doing business with reputable brands. And you know, when you work and it's so hard to establish trust, and suddenly that trust is kind of broken because there's bad things into an ecosystem, frankly, it's not cool, right? Like you feel like, come on, I spent so much time and effort on this and they give up because that. So just general piece of advice, let's make sure like we're all committed towards like greater quality rather than the quick short-term goals. As like together it's really helpful. Doing it together is more helpful, but having just like opposite interest or like bad interest is hurting everyone here.
Thank you.
Hello. So yes, as we move to like now a digital world and the metaverse, do you believe like in the future we will be able to integrate different metaverses? Like we will have different metaverses, different lands, not only, for example, the Sandbox?
I think we're already seeing so many different lands. Like just at the conference here, you see some Neon Space, you see OVR, you see various communities that have their own space where they can be creative and content. So that's what it's part. Then what makes it one metaverse, the metaverse is like a concept, it's like the internet. It's the ability for users to transfer their asset from one to another. So that's where I hope we can put more emphasis.
Thanks. Sebastian, do you think that in the long run, the metaverse will be more about the gaming aspect and really like the stuff you can do, killing some monsters and this stuff, or more about the social aspect of the, you know, like a social network 2.0?
No, I don't think the metaverse will be only about gaming. And actually, if you think just gaming purely, like we're very early and limited in the gaming capability versus the Fortnite, versus like advanced PUBG or kind of esport kind of game. So I think it's more about like broadening the spectrum of what people can do into emerging gameplay, art galleries, museum, curation of content, experiential elements, virtual concerts, virtual shows. That makes it an interesting place that more people feel attracted to. And over time, then it will increase the capability over those different vertical and activities. And in 10 years, maybe it will compete with just one vertical at a time.
So, just for last 1, 2, 3, and then.
So I think we can all agree the rise of Sandbox has been phenomenal, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on what you think would happen to users, activity, brand onboarding during a more severe crypto bear market or even a wider traditional finance bear market recession?
Well, I think bear markets are probably the best chance to test the solidity of your community, test the solidity of the value proposition you have, and make sure that you're here for the right reason, and the people you've onboarded into your community are also here for the right reason. Actually, Sandbox and many other blockchain games, some of them in the audience, were born during that bear market, and that helped them to focus as well on the right priority, which was let's build an actual product, another platform that people will use, and then we'll add the economics, maybe the token sales, the monetization after that. So in a way, it's also been helpful to reprioritize our energy and focus.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. I was curious about the pixelated aesthetic of Sandbox, and if you see it as being a core feature of the universe, of the Sandbox universe, or if it's something that you see will change as tech and renderings become more advanced and the latency gets more seamless. And if so, what is the advantage, or what generated the pixelated aesthetic?
So far, I believe our aesthetics is one of our strengths for many reasons. One, it's more and more recognizable, and it's frankly going even beyond Sandbox, as we're seeing avatars in real life. We're seeing the Snoop Dogg music clip that got already 2 or 3 million views online. It's becoming culture. The second thing is the accessibility. If you want to build a platform that anyone can build onto, aiming for high fidelity meta-human, it's impossible. It restricts who can work with it, because the time to produce, the cost to produce, the kind of tool you require, Unreal Engine, 3D Studio Max, or more complex software, nobody or very few, only professionals know how to use it. The people who work in cinema industry, for example. Here, Voxel is almost like digital Legos. Anyone can use it without reading a user manual. Anyone from the youngest to the oldest. It's like Legos, basically. And that's the thing makes us the most proud. Anyone who entered Sandbox, many of them, they will tell you, no, I was never a professional. I just tried it. It's really accessible. I was able, even as an engineer, I'm not an artist. I've been able to do it. And the same for the game maker. We chose to make it no code. We know it's limiting certain possibilities, and at the same time, it's opening game creation to so many more.
Hello. Seeing as your lands are finite, speaking long term, have you given any thoughts or measures about what you would call in real world vacancies? So say, for example, when someone loses their seed phrase or they die without transferring ownership, don't you think that in a decade or two, half of the lands will be in some kind of ownerless void that are not developed or are maybe empty?
Yes, that's very much a possibility. We also, unfortunately, have had some landowners who passed. There is Alota Money. He was a landowner. You can pay your tributes to him here. I think I don't have an answer concretely. I don't know what we should do. Should we set with governance that after a certain period of time, those land could be repurposed only for the foundation to give to projects? We cannot take them away from those wallets, but maybe we can give them a new purpose in agreement with the community.
Yeah. Can you quickly say one word about the foundation, the Sandbox Foundation?
So right now, the Sandbox Foundation, it's centralized, but it's essentially a pool of tokens that's being managed by the Sandbox team to support the creator fund, so artists, to support game maker fund, so people building experiences, support play to earn price. We just distributed 9 million Sand or 10 million Sand token 2 days ago or 3 days ago as part of the season 2. This is roughly $30 million that went into 10,000 players' hands. The staking price as well, every month, by staking your sand or your Matic sands, you were able to earn a yield. And acquiring NFTs. Also, like we've been pretty active buying NFTs from various communities, honing them in our collection and showcasing them into the hubs and all the places so that anyone entering Sandbox gets exposed to that culture, discover new artists, new content, new communities as well. In the future, the goal is to put in place a DAO that use a system for like making proposals and voting how the funds, the creator fund, the grants, etc., could be allocated rather than us as a team taking those decisions. Thank you, everyone.